Exploration is why I am here. It is why I opened a dive shop. It is why I'm in Mexico, is cave exploration. I love cave exploration. Everything else I do is circling around the opportunity to explore.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. With a few lights, a model, and a flooded cave, Natalie Gibb captures moments and creates a narrative for viewers to explore. Images that give us a glimpse into a world that many do not see or dare go. Images that take us away momentarily from our daily lives. As co-owner of Under the Jungle, she has helped establish her shop as one of the premier dive training destinations in the world, designing a team that inspires, motivates, and mentors all of their students. A place where students return time after time to further their education and become future explorers. Film, photography, explorations, Science Week, future goals, and much more. Please enjoy. Natalie, how are you doing this morning?
Hi, I'm doing really well, thank you.
Did you get your Are you a coffee drinker? Did you get your coffee this morning?
I have had about 25 cups of coffee this morning already, so we are in good shape.
Okay, so you are a coffee drinker, just like straight black, or what kind of coffee?
I like a touch of milk, no sugar.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, I am very, very excited to have you on the podcast. As you know, I've pretty much spent the last month training and doing some courses and fun diving at your shop. So it's very exciting for me to have you on the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, at some point you and I will actually have to dive together.
Yes. And I'm curious because we had a chance to talk a little bit about photography, and I hope we can get into that today on the episode. Because definitely it's something that I would like to learn from you. But I got to get an underwater setup at some point, and you could tell me all about the how you got into it and all that good stuff. But so I just wanted to ask you about your shop. You are co-owner of a shop in Mexico. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in 2016, my business and exploration partner, Vincent Roquette Cathala, and I opened up Under the Jungle, which is a cave diving and technical diving center currently located at the entrance of Cenote Taj Mahal, which is fabulous because we have a house cenote where we can do some of our training there. It's been a lot of work, but also really, really fulfilling.
Cool. So was the location of the shop, was it just there and it was right next to the cenote and you're like, this is where the shop has to be? Like, how did you decide on the location?
The location of the shop was kismet. Vince and I started Under the Jungle, just him and I, with no investors and a relatively low amount of starting money. So we were wandering around just trying to find somewhere that was sort of easy to get to, not in a big city, and convenient to the cenotes. So we are located sort of on the highway between Puerto Aventuras and Akumal, if you are familiar with the Riviera Maya, just on the side of the highway. So it's pretty fantastic. It is right next to many, many wonderful training caves. So Cenote Ponderosas, Cenote Chiquinhas, Cenote Chacmul. We're 5-10 minutes from a lot of places that are fantastic for the training that we do. We were looking around in this area, and the owners of Cenote Taj Mahal had been taking the entrance fees out of a sort of cement bunker, for lack of a better word, in front of the cenote, and we asked them if we could rent it, and they said yes. So we kind of took over that building for a ridiculously low rent, built a few other rooms on it for classrooms, and off we went. And it's been fantastic so far.
Had you ever owned a business where was that like a scary thing to try to get into when it all first started?
I had worked previously for myself for many years. For maybe 6 years, I was basically working as an independent instructor, so running my own operation, but not with a large publicly open brick and mortar store. I had a small classroom and gear shed at a different cenote, and so I think it was a natural progression. it wasn't particularly frightening. It's an investment. You know you're not going to make nearly as much money as you did just working for yourself because you're going to have overhead, you're going to have employees to pay. And so I knew that that was going to be a challenge. I knew there was going to be a lot of extra work. And so those aspects of opening a business were expected. So I would say not scary. I built up to this for a long time, and so I knew what I was getting into. And it's been hard, but it's been fulfilling.
As the business is growing, and you knew at this point, it's like, okay, this is a lot more than me and Vince can do, and then you actually like have to start hiring people in. How was that? How was that whole transition? Was it kind of welcoming, or was it like, oh, I gotta find the right candidates to represent the shop?
I would say working with staff is one of the new things for me. Finding people that are going to jive well in a team is also tricky and difficult. It was welcome to start to hire more people. It's always sort of been the vision of it, is to have a team of people. So that was not unexpected either. And I mean, the goal is to grow the shop and have more instructors and have more of a center with lots of diving going on. And we're definitely on the way. We currently have 3 instructors, myself and Vince, and we are hiring 2 more in October. So that's really exciting. And I would say the biggest challenge with having staff is slowly developing programs and training that everybody teaches the same. So the standardization across the staff of what we are explaining, how we are explaining things, has been a huge amount of work. I've got training materials that I myself have personally created for all of our courses now. I have slides, I have PowerPoints, I have standard operating procedures so that the entire shop teaches everything the same way, uses the same language when just referring to specific skills, so we're not calling things different. It's very interesting to watch students and see what level of standardization you really, really need across an instructional staff to make things cohesive from course to course. It's been fascinating. I actually really enjoy like the instructional theory and the building of the programs at my shop. It's also interesting. It's not that there's only one way to do things, or that the way we're teaching it, which is basically me and Vince's way, is the only way to do things. I think we're fairly open about the idea that there are different ways to, for example, run a jump line in cave diving or restow a long hose. But as a staff, we all need to teach it the same way so the students don't get confused. And so there was a lot of resistance to that at the beginning when we were bringing people in that had some instructional background already, because they had to assimilate and they were not always happy about that. But as we're moving forward now, we are just hiring people that we trained ourselves already at some point in the past. And that's been a lot easier because they're already familiar with the way we do things. And that's been highly successful. I couldn't be happier with the staff that we currently have. Everybody's fantastic. Everybody's wonderful. And somehow it's hysterical. It has worked out that we are all girls except for Vince. So it's kind of cool to me that I have a almost entirely female cave diving and technical diving training center that was accomplished or happened because I hired the best people I could find, and they all happened to be girls. It was not that I wanted to hire all girls. It was just the best candidates were girls. So this has been really fun. I feel like Vince is a little bit left out right now. But we are hiring one more man because, men need to be represented in the technical diving industry, at least a little bit. So we're hiring one more man in October, so Vince won't be alone anymore.
Okay, cool. Because that's actually another question is, I'm sure that you have a lot of people, I would assume you have a lot of people approach to want to come and work or intern or just do something with the shop. Is it a hard thing to kind of filter out, or you, like you said, if you've historically been training with Under the Jungle in the past, it makes it a little bit easier?
I would say there's a couple of things. Number one, like right now, I'm really just hiring people we've already trained. We get huge amounts of resumes, but it's very interesting because I think in some way people are trying to make themselves sound good, but you'll message us like, I'm already this, and this, and I know what I'm doing, and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, great, then you should just open your own dive center. Why are you asking me for a job? I would say right now, employment at our shop is basically invite only. I'm not saying it'll always stay that way. If we get an amazing candidate, maybe we will hire them. But I have my hiring plan currently worked out through about 2026 of who I'm going to hire and when and how they're coming in, assuming that the business follows some sort of slightly rational plan for growth. So I do have my hires already planned. Obviously, things would be open if we had an amazing candidate, but I wouldn't say like we're really looking for people. And we do have interns sometimes. We had somebody named Ramon from Spain who was just the most wonderful person for all of winter. Hopefully he comes back again at some point. Ramon, if you're listening, you definitely have a job whenever you want. And he came and he was willing to do anything that needed to happen. He's an incredible diver, fantastic in the water, and he came and days that we just needed somebody to carry tanks for clients, he stayed on the surface all day, didn't even get in the water and carry tanks. He worked the shop when was needed. We're really happy to have him assist courses and work with students and sit in on a couple of courses he hadn't done before. That said, I get a lot of requests for internships. Like there was a couple of people that, had moved down here recently and said, we want to sit in on your courses and learn more. And we were like, great. Well, the last person who did this gave back in this method. And they were like, oh, no. I'm already working down here and I'm guiding Cavern for somebody else. I just want to sit in on the courses for free. And you're like, okay, well, no, I don't think that's what we're really looking for. There's got to be some sort of give and take here for it to be worth it for us to have an additional person on the course because this is still extra work. And so, yeah, I would say internships are available, but there's got to be some level of give and take here for it to be worth our time. If that makes sense. I'm not trying to sound mean, but
no, not at all. Especially as an internship, I mean, you're there to learn and develop skills. So it is all about, especially at the internship level, like it is all about give and take at that point. And if anything, it feels like you should be giving more and receiving what you receive. I mean, to a point, obviously, but no, that makes perfect sense, and I don't think that's mean at all.
Yeah, and Ramon was so wonderful that any future intern is going to be in trouble because they have huge shoes to fill.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and I remember actually seeing the post, and I was able to chat with Vince kind of about how that all came about. So that was a pretty cool story, and he had a lot of wonderful things to say about him as well too. Yeah. So
you guys keep an eye out for him coming up.
Cool. Okay.
Up and comer in the dive industry for sure.
A question I wanted to ask you. So on top of cave diving, which is obviously a very big passion of yours, you also are into and are very well known for your photography. And then I also wanted to ask you a little bit about film.
So it's hysterical because I was never interested in underwater photography at all. I don't know how this happened. I have not been shooting for very long at all. I think I started with an actual camera, not a GoPro, in like 2018 or 2019. So it's only been like 5 or 6 years that I've even held a camera underwater. I was just doing a bunch of GoPro videos for fun. And a friend of mine, Luca, had been coming down to work on some video projects. And he had a Sony a7S I, which at the time was an amazing underwater video camera. And he was living in Hong Kong, so he wasn't doing anything back there with his underwater video camera. So Luca said, do you want to just hang on to my camera and play with it while I'm not here? Because your GoPro videos are pretty cool. I can see you're into this. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to hang on to your camera. And so he left this amazing underwater video camera with me. I started playing with it quite a bit, making little videos with it. The next time Luca came back, he had a Sony GH5. And I was like, but what are we doing with your camera? He's like, oh, you could just keep it. And I was like, oh my God. So then I had a camera that was basically mine. And I was using that for a long time, learning to do video and shoot with it because it turned out it was really, really fun. And I started taking photos, basically because when you put a video at that point, let's say before 2021, when you put a video on Instagram or Facebook, nobody was watching it. It wasn't the era of Reels and TikTok yet. So I was getting 100 views on a video that I spent a week making, or I was getting 1,000 interactions on a single photo. So I was like, well, clearly we should be doing more effort into photos at the moment to build my business. So I started doing more photos because it was getting more promotion for my business, and also because they worked really well as studying like lighting schemes for caves in like a very simple fashion instead of having to move through the scene. And so I got really into it, actually. I got really into photos. I don't know what was happening. I didn't like photos. I was like, photos, they're boring. I like video. I like telling stories. Turns out you can also tell a story in a still image. And so that's been really fun. I've gotten hugely into photography. I now have a Sony a7S III. Everybody always wants to know what camera I shoot. So it's not a high megapixel camera. It doesn't do super high resolution. We're not going to make a billboard out of one of my photos. And I'm okay with that because I do plan on getting back into videography eventually when I have a little more free time for myself. So you can look forward to more videos coming up in the future as well.
Okay. Did you have any photography experience before getting into going through the typical, what is it, the triangle, the ISO?
No, I had no idea what I was doing. And the settings I was using on the camera originally were either something that Luca had told me to shoot on his camera or full auto. So, because his camera's really good at light. So my first magazine cover I got, one of my mentors called me and said, hey Nat, like that's congratulations on the magazine cover. It looks really beautiful. What were your settings? And I was like, full auto. And he was like, can I call you? And I was like, okay. And he's like, you're going to have to start shooting manual and adjusting the settings. And I was like, why? This camera's doing really well. Like, I am not going to do better than the camera is doing on full auto, man. Like, I'm just going to shoot auto. Why would I do anything different? And he was like, let me tell you about the edges of this scene. They're breaking down a little bit. So I sort of learned on the fly, and I don't regret it. I think just basically screwing around and seeing what I like with no instruction whatsoever is a really good way for me as a hugely creative person who doesn't follow rules very well in the first place to learn how things work. Like if you tell me you should do this, I will absolutely go do the exact opposite for the next 5 days on the photo shoot just to see why. And if I can prove to you that you're wrong and there's fringe cases when you can do this. So I basically just made up everything as I went along. And then once I got good enough where I could actually benefit from changing a setting, my friend had stepped in and talked to me about it. And I think that was a really good way to learn, actually. I learned quite a bit just by messing around. And so, my first maybe 3 years of shooting, any settings I did, any changing in the images I did were affected entirely by how I was doing the lights. And I was just basically keeping the camera on auto. So at that point, like, I got really good at lighting. I would say I'm excellent at lighting and okay at photography, and I know how to light for my camera.
Okay. Because I will be honest, so I think maybe that's I don't know, I know my path and we were chatting about this the other day, like I'm just a dry photographer. I don't do any underwater photography. I remember when I first went from auto to manual, it was just like mind-blowing. Oh, like this button will do this button will do that. There's so many different changes to do. But I started to enjoy it more because then you can kind of create the mood that you want. So like auto, I enjoyed going into the manual section, but I mean, I still have a hard time with it. There's a lot to it. And then lighting is a whole nother aspect of photography, which you need,
Yeah, I think I don't regret the way I got into it. I really love shooting manual, obviously. Now I'm having a hugely fun time with it. I would recommend to people who are learning to shoot in any sort of environment, but particularly low light environment, the best thing you can do is just mess around with one setting for like many shoots and see the difference. So maybe you shoot your ISO to the ISO that you want, you make your shutter speed the exact shutter speed that you want, and then you just mess with the f-stop to see the differences and how it changes your image. You're going to get a lot of photos you don't want and that are absolute crap, and you might surprise yourself and get photos that are really good that you weren't expecting to work. But it's a process, and it's SD cards. You're not shooting films. There's nothing wrong with taking 1,000 photos on a shoot and just like looking through them all and just picking them apart on your own. And some of the most valuable stuff you can do is also seeing the failures and see why they didn't work, and then sometimes the surprise successes.
Yeah. I know a very, and I don't know if it's like a full-on thing now, but a very common thing that a lot of people do will shoot with video lights as opposed to strobes. Is that something that you do as well?
Yeah, I have never used strobes. I don't know how to use strobes. People like want advice on strobes, and I'm like, I really don't know. Part of it is because I am primarily interested in video, so I absolutely cannot justify the purchase of strobes when we could just buy another video light and have cooler, bigger scenes lit up. So I've never shot a strobe in my life. I don't even know how to use one. I would play with them out of curiosity, but I don't think it would be something. Watch, I'll be shooting exclusively strobes next year. I don't think it's something that I have a huge interest in. I started doing video, setting up my scenes that way, and doing all off-camera lighting, so I don't have any lights on my camera whatsoever. I'm only placing lights around, and I like my style. It's my thing. I'm, of course, interested in experimenting on different things, always. But yeah, no strobes, only video lights. I think I started about when other people might have been starting. This is sort of the first generation of photographers down here in the caves using only video lights. I mean, we were all experimenting quite a bit with it. A lot of people were saying that that's stupid, you need strobes, but you don't need strobes. And I think part of that as well is that video lights have come so far, and they're so much stronger, and the burn times are so much longer, that it is actually possible to do a full shoot with video lights and you have enough light. And I have to give a shout out to Keldon lights, which are the lights that I shoot. They're amazing. I think by far the best lights on the market. Obviously, they are cinema level video lights, but I've also using them to shoot photos for years. And one of the coolest things about them is they have a remote. Oh. So you can set up your lights and then change the light power around. So if you have settings you want in your camera and there's a hotspot or something, you can just dial that down. So that's really cool. They're cool for fun, creative effects in video. But the single best thing about having the remote for my Keldon lights is that I basically just turn them off until I'm ready to shoot. I get into position, I turn them on, I take my photos, and I turn them off. So what this means is they're only burning for like 5 minutes at a time, which means I get so much more shooting time out of a single shoot that it's really impressive, and I can be a lot more efficient with my photography.
Okay. Can you take me through, not the steps of a shoot, but like when you say, I'm assuming you have the vision before you go in, what you want to do?
No, I have no idea. My brain is really strange. I usually don't go in. I have a couple places that I wanted to shoot that I went and took photos. For those, I have a model I really like, who is Miranda Bowman. She's my muse, and she and I just work really well together. And so pretty much all the things I've done where I had like a specific idea in my head, I know she can do it. And so, because it's very hard to model, it's super hard. So usually I swim around and look for something cool, and then I make it up on the spot. I know that's weird. I have a strange brain. So I can swim into a spot and just look where I want the lights. I just know where they should go, and then I put them there, and then I take the shoot. And it has gotten to the point where I usually don't have to reposition them or anything. I can kind of look at it and see where they need to go put them there, take the photos. So that's like a superpower of mine. I know less about photography, but I'm fairly efficient, and I really have a lot of fun with the lighting, and it just somehow makes sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, because I've chatted with some other photographers, and they'll be like, yeah, you know, I have a tendency to yell a lot underwater because they're trying to position the models or do something like that. So do you just kind of point and say, go there?
Yeah, I have a lot of modeling hand signals that I've worked out to direct people, because the position of the model and the attitude of the model, what they're doing, what they're looking at, really like turns something from like a photo of a cave diver in a cave into something that's more emotional or more of a story, which I do try to do in a lot of my photos. So at that point, yeah, you have to really direct them. But I don't think screaming at people is going to help them calm down and look good at a photo. So if I am screaming, it's just to get somebody's attention because I have pointed 40,000 lumens of video lights in their face and they can no longer see that I'm flashing my light to try to get their attention. So it's usually not out of rage or trying to like tell them something. That's not going to work. And I'm getting a lot better at being a calm director. I probably was a lot more aggressive in the past, but that just stresses people out. It doesn't help you. I'm getting better at communicating with the models, giving them a clear idea of what I want and what they can do when things aren't making sense to them. So it's getting a lot easier for me to work with models, probably just because I'm getting better at explaining things, because I do this a lot. Also, the very worst case scenario, I tell them, like, I'm just going to physically move you into the position, so don't be upset. If I can't, and this is legitimately a failure on my part, like if I cannot figure out how to tell you what I need you to do, I'll just go put you there. This is not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just like I have drawn a blank and I don't know how to explain this to you. So I'm just going to move you there. You just stay where I put you. And we are all good. And so I have, on occasion, just physically swim over and grab somebody's hands and be like, we're going over here, and now you're going to put your light there. Good? All right. And they're like, sure, Natalie, whatever. I'm just going to blindly trust this looks good on the camera because this feels real weird. And so, yeah, that's worked. I think one thing I'm going to try to get in the future, I have to find somebody that I shoot with a lot, that I provide services for, is a woman who has won a lot of awards. She's just, hands down, an incredible photographer, which is Renee Capozzola. She's won Underwater Photographer of the Year and things like that. And she's great at communicating. She's so good. And one of the things she got, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, is she has a little shaker, like that you use in the open water to get people's attention. But, you know, I'm telling you, when you've pointed... She brings extra lights too, so we've got maybe 100,000 lumens of video lights on me, and she's trying to tell me to move over. I can't. Like, you can have, you know, a halcyon flare or focus light with the world's most laser beam light, and you could be flashing it in my face, and I will have no idea that you were trying to get my attention because I am now officially blind. So she has a shaker thing to call my attention, and it's actually really good. So I'm probably going to try to get some sort of sound maker because I feel like shaking a shaker at somebody is a lot nicer than screaming at them, and then they know you're not mad. I do scream sometimes, but it's usually in frustration at myself. I tell models, if I'm making noises, it's not you. There's very little you can do wrong. If you just stay where I put you, you're fine. It's me. It's me that's the problem.
So that's some of the challenges of still photography. So when you're doing video, what kind of stories are you trying to create? And then obviously, I would assume that there's some big differences. Like, I guess, what kind of stories do you like to create? Well, I've done a lot of exploration videos with Vince in the past, not so much recently because I just, you know, it's going to be a 4 or 5 day edit, and there's no point in taking the shots if I'm not going to have the time to edit. And as the business has grown, I have almost no free time for myself. It's a rare day where I get a day off or even a couple hours off to just do something that I personally enjoy. We're working towards having a little more free time as we hire and train staff. But as I mentioned before, like, we're very picky and they need to be really good. So it's been a process. It's working forward towards it. So I expect to do more video like that in the future and more exploration videos in the future. I also have done some client videos for people in the past that want something to show their families. So things talking about why they love cave diving, such like that. And I have also done some videos for my husband, Rory O'Keefe, who is a cave cartographer. He has done a few like actual cave maps, like walls, features, everything, like a drawing, like what you would see for a mountain range or something like that. And they're incredible. He's really into it. So I did start shooting like promotional videos and stuff for his map, him telling his story. So in the future, hopefully for his next map, I don't want to speak too soon, we'll have a more detailed video coming out about this. He's going to start his next map soon, yay. And it will hopefully be really fun to shoot and tell this story as well. I'd like to do, more detailed pieces about the human side of exploration, about the geology, about the science. This is the kind of thing I'm really into. Less like chest beating or cool exploration stuff.
It's not really my vibe, but like the curiosity, the delicacy of what you need to be able to do. Yeah, and science and stories are very, very interesting to me. So we'll see. We'll see if I actually have time to do more things like this. But I'm hoping things move to having a little bit more free time for myself to do creative projects in the future.
So a couple questions out of that. The first one I'll start with is, I guess, the exploration side. So I actually had, when I was chatting with Vince, I was asking him a little bit about exploration, and he was telling me I can't remember exactly how it went or how he put it, but basically, like, with exploration, I was kind of asking him, like, mindset kind of going into it, and he was telling me it's something that you really have to appreciate is frustration, because that's mostly what it is frustration when you're exploring. Do you agree, or can you talk to me a little bit about that?
This is true. Absolutely. Vince is way more intense about things than I usually am, but he's right. He's right on this one. I think I get less frustrated than he does sometimes. But exploration is why I am here. It is why I opened a dive shop. It is why I'm in Mexico, is cave exploration. I love cave exploration. Everything else I do is circling around the opportunity to explore. We haven't had as much free time building the business to explore as we used to, but we have still done something like 110 kilometers of survey and exploration in the area over the last, how long have I known him? Since 2009, which is 15 years now, so maybe it's not that much when you consider the amount of years we've been doing it. But it's super fun. Again, we hope to sort of get back into that as the business is slowly becoming a little bit more self-sufficient. It is happening. I'm really excited. I would say the part of exploration that is frustrating is people think, like, you're going to be a cave explorer, so you're going to go explore some caves. And you're going to go find a cave, and you're going to explore. And therein lies the problem. You must find the cave. And there are tons of cenotes, or the sinkholes that open into the underground cave systems here, but they don't all have diveable caves. So you might have a hole and it might be filled in with sediment and it's not possible to get into the cave system. You might go down a hole and there might be no water. You might go down a hole and find a tunnel that goes for 20 feet and then ends like 6 meters. You don't know. So I would say, most of the time, maybe 1 in 25 places you check actually has diveable cave. It's not a lot. There's a ton of diveable cave and a ton of cenotes here, but there's even more cenotes. So you end up spending, I would say, most of your time scouting and looking for something to explore. And then when you do find something, it's really amazing, and it actually makes it all the more sweeter having put that time in. So that part of it is amazing when you do find it. What's really funny is sometimes you'll be on a streak and you'll find like 5 going caves in a year, and it's amazing. You've got all these projects and then you kind of finish them. And now you're looking for caves and it goes for like 2-3 years and you just keep checking holes and none of them have any going cave. And you're like, I will never explore again. And so I think that's where the frustration comes, is you have to play the long game. You have to understand that this is part of it. And quite honestly, like going out into the jungle, which is just an absolute miserable environment. I do not know why we like it. I think we're masochists. You go out into the jungle, it's like, 110 degrees and 100% humidity, or if you're a Fahrenheit person, 45 degrees and 100% humidity still. It's scorching sun when you're in the sun. Otherwise, it's just dark under the trees and filled with mosquitoes. There are wasps. Every single snake is poisonous. The ground is uneven. You can step in little holes and twist your ankle. Definitely happened. You're just sweating buckets. Every single tree either has spikes or is poisonous, has some way to defend itself from you. The wasps, I don't know if I said wasps. There's wasps. There's a lot of wasps. There's spiders everywhere. Everything's stinging you. It's just like horrific. I read something, I believe, don't quote me on this, where Shackleton, the guy who did, the Arctic expeditions or the Antarctic expeditions, said that his trip to the Yucatan was far worse than anything he had experienced at either of the poles. And I would believe that. Yeah, here we go. It's fun. It's fun for us. I still to this day don't know why I like going out in that shit. It's not good. So then we do these huge hikes through this stuff, carrying lots of gear, and we get in this hole, and like we're like, ooh, a cave. Like the landowners think we're nuts. If you think it's cool to be a cave explorer, you should realize it is not cool. You are part of a fringe of society that has something fundamentally wrong with them and are weird. Like you're a weird person. You're doing this for some deep psychological issue that you have. I don't know what ours are. And people think you are insane. Like the landowners are like, we get out. We're like, we mapped a kilometer of cave. And they're like, okay. Really good. Congratulations. You're like, do you want to see photos? Or they're like humoring you. They're like, sure. You want to show me your photos? You can see the photos. Do you want to see a map? They're like, okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to go back to working on my house now. I'm going to go deal with my cows now. You guys have a good day. I'll see you next time. And they're like weird gringos. I don't know why they want. They're very nice gringos, but I don't know what. They keep telling me about all these things, and like, these people are nuts, but they seem happy. like, so it's not, it's a weird thing to do. And the other thing is, with exploration, people get really, really into being like, ooh, I'm a big name cave explorer. I'm a famous cave explorer. And you're like, yeah, about 300 people on the entire planet think that's cool. Like most people don't even know this passion and sport you're into exists. And if they do, they're like, why would you do this? And even if they think it's kind of cool, they're like, all right, well, anyways, I'm going to go back to watching sports or making money or, doing some good in the world because I'm an emergency room doctor. Like, this is a purely silly thing that we do. So it's frustrating. We get really involved in it. But I think something, as I've gotten older, that really helps me to avoid that level of frustration is simply that you can't take this too seriously. Like, it's a dumb thing to do. We have to be aware of it. I love it. It's my passion in life. But it's dumb, realistically.
And
I don't know what we're doing.
You had kind of mentioned it, but I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a big part of that exploration is developing relationships with the landowners.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say landowner relations is the number one thing you have to get good at. I'm a huge introvert. I'm not particularly social. So it's been a big push for me to like step outside of my comfort zone and like approach people and kind of like cold basically talk to people in the jungle and things like that. But I think what a lot of people don't realize down here in Mexico is there isn't really any public land. If it's owned by the government, you're not allowed to be on it, period. And the rest of it is owned by somebody. So there's a lot of trespassing that goes on in the exploration world by people who maybe come to Mexico and decide they're going to be like the cool kids, referenced my previous comment, and go exploring, which is silly because it's not public. It's either privately owned or it's owned by a community or it's owned by the government. So you shouldn't really just go hiking around in the jungle without permission looking for cenotes. If you do, maybe nothing will happen and you'll be lucky. But there have also been situations where I personally know people that have put themselves in very dangerous situations. For example, I know people who have found illicit farming operations back in the forest, and clearly this being Mexico, if you find somebody's illegal pot farm and they see that you saw it, you will not be walking out of there. So you don't want to stumble upon somewhere or see something you're not supposed to see. And I also know people who have discovered landing strips in the middle of the forest with no roads going to them, which obviously has to deal with illicit substance trafficking via airplanes, which again, if you get caught seeing that, like it's over. Like you're not walking away from there. Nobody will ever know what happened to you. So it is not worth it, in my opinion, to go trespassing One, because it's super dangerous if you find the wrong thing, and two, because it's honestly just rude. Like, who are we as these white people to come down into some Maya territory and be like, oh, I'm a cave explorer, I'm just going to hike around on your land? It's like the rudest possible thing. How would you feel if you had property and there was some dumbasses just walking around looking for holes in it, right? It's dumb, it's stupid, it's mean, it's completely disrespectful. So we have never done anything like that. Generally, what we do is get permission. So this has been pretty successful for us. We work with landowners a lot. But with that getting permission, you have to realize that no is no, right? So very often, as well as getting to see cool things, with the help of the landowner who is curious about what they have, we have also been told no, probably more times than we've been told yes. People don't want you on their land. They don't want people diving on it. They don't care about the cenotes. They don't care about the cave underneath them. Or they don't want you on their land for other reasons, which you should respect. So we have to basically go make friends with people, get to know them, and then if they're nice enough to grant us access to their cenotes, then sometimes we can explore them with the permission of the people. And now keep in mind, with that, maybe 1 out of 25 of those things has significant going cave. You could start to get the picture of how much time and effort this takes on land. But again, some of those landowners have become like true friends. Like, I've known them for 10 years now. Like, they're buddies. Like, I have gone and had dinner with them often on their land. I know their families. Like, and so it's really rewarding to sort of interact and get to know people that are really from here as well. It's not purely selfish. In the end, it becomes really interesting to develop these relationships, see a different style of life. And that's also exploration, right? That's like cultural exploration and getting to know people just like you never in a million years would have met in your like first world little gringo life back in the US. So it's fascinating to me to see their different viewpoints on the world and see how they see things, and develop true cross-cultural, like really cross-cultural friendships is really interesting. But so then you see, if we talk about frustration and landowner relationships, now we're going out, we're trying to meet people, we're trying to get permission. It takes so long to even get to know people, and then sometimes they say yes, and when they say yes, sometimes the cave goes, and you're lucky enough to have this spot. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and it is a lot of frustration. But it's also, as I said, fun to get to know the people. It's fun to get to be out in the jungle, and it's part of the game. So we really can't complain about it. It is definitely like my big passion in life.
So I would assume you're just kind of out in the middle of jungle. There's not, fences going all around, or are there? So how do you, once you find a spot, how do you know where to go find who owns the land? Like, is that
we don't go find the spot first, because that would involve you being in the land without their permission. We go to little towns, we talk to people, we get connections of people. We're like, oh, my cousin's brother's son has a cenote. We're like, okay, can we talk to your cousin? Hey, cousin, if you think it's cool, can we talk to your brother? And you just go like that. So we used to go to little towns and ask them if they have any cenotes, they'd be interested, and things like that. So we've never gone and found the cenote and then got permission, because that would be against my personal philosophy of not trespassing on people's land.
Okay.
And of course, I think there's been a few times where we've inadvertently trespassed. We didn't know, somebody told us we had permission and they did not have the right to give us that permission. Things like that. I think anybody can make those mistakes, but we do truly try to do it properly.
And then my other question I wanted to ask, because I was curious, and actually I'm hoping to maybe attend next year, because I think this year will be too soon, but you conduct a science week. Can you tell me a little bit about what goes on there?
Yeah, Science Week is super fun. I love it. We're not doing it this year, so you're okay. It just, everything got too overwhelming for both the scientists that I work with and for myself. So Science Week is an invention of Dr. Patricia Beddoes from Northwestern University and myself. Trish is a hydrogeologist at Northwestern University, and she did her PhD down here in the year 2000. So I actually, because I also have a background in science and am a huge geek, I actually read her thesis before I ever met her. And she's done just game-changing stuff down here. She's so interesting. And she's been studying the caves down here now for 25 years, which makes us all feel old. And I met her originally at Speleotech, when Speleotech was really a thing that was owned by one of me and Vince's mentors, Bill Phillips, who unfortunately passed away in 2017, I believe. But we used to be down there all the time because Bill was the head of the Quintana Roo Speleological Survey. And so what he was doing was they would donate line to explorers that already had knots in it, which was really important at that point because knotting your own line is awful. And he had like a worker who would knot the line and these huge spools of it. So we would go down there and you could fill your reels at Speleotech and then go exploring. And then the deal was you had to report your findings back to the Quintana Roo Speleological Society. So we were down there one time filling up our reels, and this little white like sedan pulls up. This woman who is full of energy at about my height, which is, maybe she's 5'2" or something. She's slightly taller than me. Hops out of the car with like an excess of energy and opens the trunk and starts pulling out like just an insane amount of scientific apparatus and just piling it on like a table on the floor at Speleotech. And then she starts pulling out doubles and like all this crap. And I'm like, that's cool. And Bill's like, oh, this is Trish from Northwestern University. She's a hydrogeologist. And I'm like, you're so cool. So I met Trish that way. And then when Bill passed away, unfortunately, she didn't like have a home shop really anymore. So I was like, come to Under the Jungle and hang out with me, please. And so we've become friends. I'd consider her a close friend. She's an amazing human being. And so I started helping her with her science quite a bit. One of the things that she's done so many different projects down here, but her long-term project is these data sensors, these data loggers called cave pearls that her and her husband actually developed. And they're open source cave data sensors that we can put into caves. They made them out of hardware store PVC and Arduino data controller boards and AA batteries, and they will now go for 4 years, which is insane, or even longer. These are fantastic because if you have any idea about like scientific equipment, just a flow sensor that you would get like NOAA would use would be, $20,000 or more. So it's like cost prohibitive to do a big study baseline of something like flow in the Riviera Maya. So now she has hundreds and hundreds of these things that she made herself deployed across the Riviera Maya, doing like a long-term like sensing network. And she has things that will sense flow, temperature, et cetera, a huge amount of things, water level. And so we've had this like robust baseline of the flow and everything in the area for years and years and years. Now, part of Science Week is learning about these things and helping her deploy them. And then we also have other interesting projects that we do during this week where we do a bunch of science out of the Under the Jungle. So I'm helping her all year. Science Week, then we start to work with these, and we have done a lot of what we're calling discharge calibration, which is taking that data from the flow sensors and basically turning that information, after doing more studies, into like cubic meters of water flowing through the cave, and really like interesting quantitative data. And this project, the Science Week, basically what it is we offer it to people who have done training with us, are welcome to come. It's a nonprofit week, so they just come. Last year, our local fill station sponsored it with tank fills, so there was no cost to anybody. We go help Trish, and she does lectures, and she explains what we were doing, and we get in the water, and we do all sorts of cool stuff with Trish, and we do real science that has a real impact, and we'll get published and help her out. I just learned so much from this. It's fantastic, and it's one of the really cool opportunities that we can offer to our divers. We also were involving more local divers in the area last year, which was really fun to get some of the local community, but it's probably going to stay sort of niche like that. We have to have known factors when we're taking people in and putting them in like non-friendly, non-tourist caves and doing science in them is pretty demanding, but it's a huge amount of fun. And while we're not doing it this year, we will continue to do it in the future. It's just Trish has an insane workload. I have an insane workload this year, and it's just not going to be possible this year, but it'll happen again in the future.
Cool. So just to be clear, you don't have to have a science background to go into, but you'll learn a whole lot of science.
The whole idea is that this is like citizen science project. So I've always had this philosophy that you will not necessarily be able to teach the scientists to cave dive well. This is not necessarily going to be possible. Trish is a good cave diver, but she's an exception, right? Like a lot of the scientists that are doing these things, you can't teach them to cave dive to the level they need to be able to do it safely. And they don't have time to practice that all the time. They're doing other things. But you can teach cave divers to do really low-level, technician-level science and to observe, which is really important. Like, what things do they need to be observing? So we could teach the cave divers to science, but we can't necessarily teach the scientists to cave dive. So by doing this, by putting the technician-level stuff in the hands of people who are very, very capable and will be safe when they're doing it and can be trained to observe, right? Then we can get so much more done. And then we can let Trish, who does get in the water and does cave dive as well, but she needs to be at the point, the controlling person of this project, and taking all that data that everybody's gathering and crunching it and coming up with the results of things. And part of the reason we're not doing Science Week this year is she literally had the craziest year. And so she hasn't actually had the time to get through all the data from last year because she generated so much. So she's still working on it. So why would we create more yet? I don't think it's worth it. But we will next year. 2025 is a goal.
Okay, well, I hope to be an attendee. I will put it on the calendar as soon as it's marked.
Once we know.
Yeah. So my last question for you before I let you go, and thank you for making the time to be here because I know you have a very busy schedule. Speaking of teaching somebody to cave dive, if somebody is wanting to get into overhead environment, what is the best piece of advice besides calling or emailing Under the Jungle? What is the best piece of advice you could give to that person? What to expect, or what, the mindset to go in? Just best piece of advice.
I think a lot of people think they're good divers, and they may be good divers, but they are still going to basically have their asses handed to them at the beginning of any sort of technical training. It's not that they're not good. It's not that they can't do it. It's that they haven't ever been presented with the information or the skills that they need to do it safely. And so I would say, for cave training and stuff, and technical training at all, you have to just set your ego aside. If you sit there thinking you're going to be good and you're going to impress the instructor, you are going to have a bad time, and maybe you're going to quit. You're going to hate yourself and you're going to cry. If you go in being like, I know I have no idea what I'm doing, and your job is to teach me, you will have a good time. You need to be gentle on yourself, understanding that you're coming in with no knowledge, be an open slate, and learn. Don't think you're going to be good. You probably won't be the best student we've ever had, and you'll probably not be the worst student we've ever had. You're going to be somewhere in there, and it's our job to make you good. That's the thing, right? This is not on you. And I tell people this all the time, my favorite thing as a fairly experienced diver is when I am a student, because this is the only time that I am not expected to be good. If I go teach a course and I am wildly out of trim and other people see me, this is humiliating. Right? If I am in some rebreather course and I am sucking, this is not my problem. This is the instructor's problem, and they have to fix me. It's the only time I'm free to be bad. So you need to give yourself the opportunity to suck. Just go suck. It's okay. The idea every day is to suck a little bit less and get better. And so leave your ego at the door. Don't expect that you're going to be good to start. And put that responsibility on your instructor to make you good. That's, I think, a much easier attitude to deal with training with. And then just be an open slate. If you go in and you get upset with yourself, this is not productive, and nobody's going to be perfect at the beginning, not even you. So take it easy, give yourself the time, and be kind to yourself in the learning process.
Natalie, once again, thank you very much for joining the podcast. I absolutely appreciate it all.
I'm thrilled to be here, and congratulations on your full cave certification. It's exciting.
It is, and I'm very excited to do more dives. So more diving in the future, and Science Week I have to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So thank you.
All right.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.